Much more mundane. Concept Space Ninja sounds a lot more appealing than Super Babes. I think that one of the biggest issues is that First Descendant is being portrayed as Super Babes. And that's through sort of their developers' own own doing, right? Of like really leaning into like the gooner side of it. It seems like it's more of a meme, and then that's sort of doing a disservice to the game. You know, once you get a certain reputation, it's really hard to shake that reputation. And the longer you lean into being like a gooner game, the harder it's going to be to shake that and be seen as like a powerhouse looter shooter that rivals like Destiny or Warframe or something like Borderlands, right? That's not to say there's not a market for people who just prefer that type of type of game, but that market is obviously smaller than like a normal size game, normal size market. It's not like you can just remove skins people bought. I mean, I think it's even less about the skins, because I don't think the skins are even the problem. I think it's just the community and the perception and the way people talk about the game. I think a lot of people just talk about this game like it's just a tits and ass game. And I think that if the media is portraying your game as a tits and ass game, and like all the narrative around your game is a tits and ass game, and like the big conversation and fun points about your game is like people bitching because toenails aren't painted and not people bitching because there's not content, then you start to create this dichotomy where you're just fucked. Stellar Blade's doing great and it's a tits and ass game. Stellar Blade is also more than a tits and ass game. Honestly, that's true though, Hunt. Like the game's not bringing anything new to the genre of looter shooter besides tits and ass. Exactly. Stellar Blade has a lot more going to it than just the tits and ass. Like, I have yet to play Stellar Blade. I'm going to play it when it comes out. But from what I understand, Stellar Blade is actually a good game with good mechanics, and a good story, and like a good gameplay loop. I haven't played it, so I can't say that. But that's what I hear. Yeah, like when they played Phasmo games, like all other games were considered a Phasmo clone. Yeah, because they didn't bring anything, right? Like GHI and all these other games. They were literally the same game, and the little things they did bring weren't enough to really separate them from the pack.
Into the light.
Plot was moving it, to say least. Near ripoff. It might be a near ripoff, but it doesn't mean it didn't do well. Cosmetics are pretty common in other games. It doesn't hurt anyone. Absolutely. I don't think cosmetics hurt people. I don't think the cosmetics or the fact that like you can run around with your ass cheeks hanging out is what's driving the narrative. Other games have fucking, like, I was playing Expedition 33 and you can get bathing suits in that game. But did that mean that I labeled that game as a tits and ass game because I could get a bathing suit on, like, Lune? No. You know what I mean? Like, that didn't drive the narrative. And I think the devs were hyper aware of it happening because they were calling shit jiggle physics. And then they stopped, and then they actually started pushing back against people labeling things as jiggle physics because they started to realize that the narrative that they were leaning into was starting to get out of control, and that was the only narrative that was being driven. Dipping their toes more into gooner stuff with the heirloom skins. I think that they did that as a direct response to the perceived threat that First Descendant was, in the fact that they had attractive-looking females. I think that was a direct response to First Descendant. I could be wrong, because I'm obviously not in the room making the decisions. I played First Descendant because I couldn't stand Warframe at all. Warframe couldn't keep you for more than 30 hours. There's definitely... Warframe is not a game for everybody. Just like Destiny 2 isn't a game for everybody, and the First Descendant isn't a game for everybody. I don't think there's a game for everybody right now. It wasn't marketed that way. Seen when Concord, it was seen that way. I could see that as a counterpoint. Like, even though they didn't market it that way, just the absolute like impressions of it when you were showing games like Concord side by side created a narrative. We've talked about this before. It doesn't matter what the fact is. It matters what people's perceptions are. And if you're a company and you don't say things, you're letting other people say things for you. And at some point, when you let other people say things for you, you might as well be saying them yourself, right? Because you are literally allowing people to suck the air out of the room, and in doing so, they're controlling the narrative for you. So even if you didn't bill your game as X, Y, or Z, if the entire public is billing your game as X, Y, and Z, and you're not pushing back on the narrative at all, you might as well be running that narrative yourself. What still bothers when people use gooner incorrectly? People use a lot of words incorrectly. It's the internet, right? Because it is true, people use the term incorrectly. And people start using terms as a term of endearment and not what they actually mean. It's a way of people to take ownership of something, but in doing so, it diminishes the value of it for other people. But unfortunately, it's just the way the internet works. Like, how many people get labeled all sorts of negative things on the internet that in absolutely no way, shape, or form are those things, right? And then they just get labeled them, and people call them words that literally don't mean anything close to what the person is, but they just end up being labeled it. I think a lot of hours of D2 Div 1, Warframe just wasn't for you. A lot of people like the movement in Warframe and the art style, and a lot of things just aren't for them. That's why Warframe has a niche audience. Like, you can look at Warframe and say Warframe does very well if you want to say that, but at the end of the day, Warframe has a very niche audience. And a lot of people that play Warframe don't play other things. Not everyone, but a lot of people that do. And there are a lot of people that just absolutely refuse to touch Warframe. Just because of what the game is, the way it works, how it runs, the systems, visuals, the movement, everything. Their mobile's all tits and ass. People are labeling it. You like Warframe, it just feels old. I could see that. It was dope as fuck. It was awesome. This game knows how to market, right? Like, it's marketing 101. Like, beauty and sex sell. So there's nothing wrong into leaning into marketing 101, right? Like, it's the West that forgot that that shit actually sells. It's not the rest of the world. The rest of the world came to the US and took fucking marketing from goddamn Yale or Harvard, and they still teach you in Harvard and Yale in fucking marketing 101 that sex sells. Like, I don't know at what point fucking Western devs and marketing teams just literally forgot the thing that we learned from the 1920s to the 2020s. People just literally lost 100 years of marketing knowledge. Wes has a huge market in OnlyFans. They definitely do. It's a weird thing because there's whole reasons behind why it happened. The idea of shaming sex is very much a Western ideology. Yeah. Well, and like, there's like a whole lot that goes into it. Like, I could like stop talking and just sit down and talk about all of it for hours. On like why it happened and where it happened and why these things happen and why people work this way and the psychology behind it. But like, people just don't care to hear it. Like, people just don't care. There's just a group of people, and there are things that have happened that have pushed people into like the ability to make powers and decisions, and then they use those things to push agendas, and those agendas like directly contradict like years of like built-in knowledge and everything else. There's like so much that goes into it. One thing I don't like about the whole Warframe, Warframe is 10 years. Of course, game's gonna be fleshed out, but then people say, oh, why don't they just copy Warframe? Carbon copy of another game from 1 for 1. No, I mean, I think that you should compare Warframe and First Descendant in things that are comparable. If you're comparing the amount of content they have over 10 years, you're just retarded. One game is a 12-year-old game and one game is less than a year old. But in the things that are directly comparable, I think it's fine to make comparisons. We can do it. And I think that most people that want to have an honest conversation do that. And then I think there are just people who like to argue from a very disingenuous point, and they just want to make their point. And in doing that, they will use very disingenuous ways of arguing. Because anybody that is comparing two things that are not apples is just being an asshole. But if two things are apples, you can most definitely compare them, right? So either if somebody's comparing an apple and an orange, it's because they have an agenda that they're trying to push. And they're trying to tell you that, well, because an apple and an orange are both fruits, that we're okay to compare these two things. And it's like, well, okay, well, if we're going to compare them as being fruits, that's fine. But you cannot draw direct parallels from an apple and an orange as an overall comparison. That's just being an ass. You know what I mean? And I think that for the most part, if you talk to people who have at least two brain cells to rub together, they'll make valid arguments.